Coming up, who was really to blame for Brexit? The people that headed the pathetic and overconfident Remain campaign? The white working class? Or the architects of Brexit, the disaster capitalists and their Russian backers? Before we get into it, please hit the like button, subscribe and get notified of new videos every Wednesday and at weekends. When asked to name one economist who thought Brexit would not be a disaster, Michael Gove famously said, "Britain has had enough of experts." Andrea Loathsome claimed as recently as January this year that the sunlit uplands of Brexit were on the horizon, just as the catastrophic harm it's inflicted on our exporters was becoming ever clearer. Disaster capitalism works by delivering huge shocks to the system and then taking advantage of the resulting fear, uncertainty and confusion to create new money-making opportunities, with the added useful benefit of justifying exceptional powers for the government to reassemble a new social order. And this is what's happening right now as we see a lurch towards authoritarianism in this country, while at the same time seeing fortunes being passed to Tory donors and cronies through such wheezes as the £37 billion test track and trace system headed up by Dido Harding, the wife of the government's so-called corruption czar, John Penrose. If you weren't already aware of that, let me give it a minute for it to sink in. The vastly underqualified ex-jockey Dido Harding, illegally appointed by Johnson as boss of a multi-billion-pound project, is the wife of the Tories' anti-corruption czar. This is disaster capitalism in action, and such corruption is made even easier by the double whammy of a pandemic. The Tory party has transmorphed into a hybrid Tory-UKIP-Brexit party, and in just 4 years has succeeded in throwing the UK's affairs into complete confusion. And the potential winnings for ruthless politicians are huge. They see an opportunity to draw up new legislation at warp speed that will govern all aspects of our lives. Already, we've seen the floating of the Police, Crime, Sentencing and Courts Bill and a new draconian points-based immigration system that potentially breaks international law. And it's all thanks to a Brexit delivered by a wealthy elite, including such figureheads as Leave.eu co-founder and UKIP donor Aaron Banks, who met with Russian embassy officials 11 times in the lead-up to the referendum. Nigel Farage, a wealthy stockbroker and dog whistler to the racists. Jacob Rees-Mogg with his offshore investments trust Somerset Capital Management, who are now moving operations to Dublin within the EU. Plus, press barons Rupert Murdoch, Lord Rothermere and the Barclay brothers. And their newspapers, The Sun, the Daily Mail and the Daily Telegraph. Plus, of course, their nominal leader, or should I say, useful idiot, the old Etonian Alexander Boris de Pfeffel Johnson. Just a few years before the referendum, he was an enthusiastic pro-EU politician before hitching his political star to the Brexit bandwagon. These wealthy, privileged, privately educated individuals, many, like Johnson, who were not even born in Britain, are the leaders and the sole beneficiaries of this Brexit revolution. They don't care about the working class Leave voters. They lied to them and manipulated them into believing that their grievances were against the EU. And all revolutions are powered by grievance. But were their grievances against the EU real or just concocted? In June 1975, I was 14 and a member of the Young Socialists. At that time, I didn't think Britain should join the common market, as I saw it as a capitalist cartel designed to protect the rich and powerful establishment. But when I grew up and as an adult I spent time in Europe for work and pleasure, I began to see the great advantages. The European countries I visited seemed more modern, progressive, talking about women's rights, workers' rights, environmental standards and food quality. At that time, I remember clearly Britain was referred to as the dirty man of Europe, and we just seemed socially less evolved than our continental counterparts. Now that the Brexiteer elite have won, I fear a return to those backward times. They have control. The government is led by one of their own. For 4 years, we've watched executive power being used to bypass Parliament and control being delegated to unelected advisors in Downing Street like Dominic Cummings and Carrie Symonds. Parliamentary sovereignty indeed. Take back control, indeed. Unelected bureaucrats, indeed. It's laughable how deceitful those catchphrases were. And worse, the structure of the United Kingdom itself is likely to collapse as a result of Brexit, whether it's Northern Ireland or Scotland that leaves first. Gibraltar will probably beat them both, beating a path back into the EU. But the disaster capitalists won't care. They'll make even more headway under a permanent Tory regime in England and Wales, who are no longer having to worry about opposition from overwhelmingly anti-Tory Scotland and the increasing headache of Northern Ireland. Other tactics from the disaster capitalist playbook are to discredit or ignore experts. Michael Gove has been very quiet of late, perhaps recovering from his latest cocaine bender. But when he famously said he is sick of experts, what he meant was that he was sick of being held to account and contradicted by facts. The playbook states quite clearly that a disaster capitalist must pretend that the broadcast media are biased, its civil servants are useless, schools are teaching liberal propaganda, and immigrants are a threat to working class livelihoods, and finally that the NHS is not fit for purpose. Now granted, they failed to grubby the image of our amazing NHS, but they did try. Remember, they branded the failed privatised track and trace system as the NHS, even though it was actually being run by Serco, Randox and other Tory associates and donors. Brexit was delivered by a group of wealthy, privately educated, mainly foreign-based and foreign-backed members of a political and financial elite who harness the sense of grievance of a British industrial working class that has suffered economically and socially ever since the Thatcher-initiated decline of manufacturing and the post-Blair years of Tory public squalor and austerity. Am I right? Leave a comment below and I'll do my best to respond.